Hi everybody, this is Shane R. Monroe with Monroe World, and we're going to spend some time with the Quest 1 and the Quest 2 today. We're going to compare physical differences, talk about screen differences, talk about your burning questions, all of that coming up. Okay, so I've written an article on Medium called Quest 1 versus Quest 2, the final showdown. And I think I pretty much was as fair as possible about these two units, but a lot of people have said, hey Shane, this would be great if you made a video about it. So we're making a video about it. We'll cover some of the same points, and we'll extrapolate a few of those points that I made previously with some new information that I might have. So here are the two different units. The Quest 1, which is no longer in production, but it's easy to get on the used market. This is the Quest 2. This is the only thing that you can buy in the store these days. And as you can see, one's black, one's white. It makes it very easy to follow along. I have a lot of aftermarket mods on these items, including grips and additional comfort features. And we're going to cover all of those as well. But let's start off with basic characteristics of the unit. So I'm going to take the controllers. We're going to put these to the side. We're going to look at these later. But let's take a look at each one of these. So let's start with the Quest 1. Now, the Quest 1 was often discussed as being rather front-heavy, so when you put this guy on, the unit pushes down against your face, and that is actually true. And it makes sense that when you put this guy on, the unit, if it's adjusted right, and you can see that there's some angles to adjust with, if you're angling it incorrectly and it's resting down on your cheekbones like this, then yeah, it's going to put this pressure on your face and it's going to cause like massive headaches. But if you've got the unit properly put on, and I'll show you the back here in just a second, and you've got the weight on your forehead, and it's just sort of leaning down on it, it's a lot more comfortable. And if you look at the strap on the Quest 1 is what I would call the behind the head, and I know I've got a little aftermarket guy on here, but you can see the strap goes around that, there's a name for it, I wish I'd written it down, for the little bump on the back of your head. This cradles the back of your head, giving you sort of what I call a behind-the-head experience. And the strap, as you can see, is made of a nice durable material. It's thick, it's fairly comfortable, and I do have a couple of aftermarkets on here that I'll show you. But let's take a look at the physical characteristics of the machine itself, because we're going to compare and contrast this. So as with both units, there's 4 cameras looking down and looking up and trying to get a sphere of capturing for you. For your tracking, there's a power button. On the bottom, you have a volume rocker as well as an IPD adjuster. We're going to talk a lot more about that in just a minute. We also have a stereo headphone jack on each side, which is great, and there's perfect reasons for using that. And then you have the USB-C connector, which you can see I have a magnetic connector on. We're going to talk more about that in a minute too. In order to improve the comfort, I added an aftermarket dedicated to the Quest 1 battery. This adds some weight, and I can also run a cable through the top or over to the plug, and I can get more battery life. So these are pretty common. People strap batteries to the back of this thing all the time. You'll also notice with part of the aftermarket mod here, it actually adds a back of the head pad too, which really adds a lot of comfort. On the inside, we have a very nice cloth-based, this is all stock. This is a cloth-based, sort of a spongy face gasket. And it's very comfortable. It's very comfortable. And I've never had to replace it for comfort problems. Now, what I have done is on the side, and you can see this is sort of put together. I have a little thing here for putting my Bluetooth transmitters on. But I also took a wide piece of Velcro and wrapped it around the sides so that this will give me some support on the top of my head. So if I've got the unit on, this strap is holding the weight off of my face, right? So this is a really cheap, couple of dollar fix to put some Velcro along this. And it adds a good amount of support here. So this makes the Quest 1 extraordinarily comfortable. I can wear the Quest 1 for a very long time without getting problems with just a couple of very simple type of aftermarket mods. So let's go on to the Quest 2. Here's the Quest 2. It's about 10% lighter. This is one of those things that people are like, oh, it's so much lighter. It's going to feel so much better on your head. But the truth is, the weight is, yeah, this does feel a little bit heavier. But 10%, while people say that's a lot, I don't find that necessarily true. But let's talk about the other physical characteristics. You'll see 4 cameras as before. You'll also see a power switch, USB-C, which I've also put a magnetic charger into. And you'll see a volume control, but what you do not see is an IPD rocker back here, or a slider for your IPD, your interpupillary distance. So this is very, very important. This is one of the reasons, frankly, why I like the Quest 1 in many ways better than the Quest 2. I've got hair all over this thing, gross. Is because of that adjustment. And we'll go over the IPD thing in just a minute. So this is the notorious cheap strap that comes with it. If you're on Oculus Quest subreddit, you'll hear a lot of people talking about how horrible this is. This is a terrible strap. You immediately have to put a $50 strap on here to make it comfortable. And there is some truth and honesty behind that. I'm going to take off my little aftermarket clip-on here, and this is a 3D printed guy. A friend of mine does these, and I'll put a link down for you. It's a very simple thing. He just 3D printed it and sent it to me. And this makes a whole world of difference. But I'm going to take it off just to show you guys what this strap looks like. Uninhibited. So this strap, a lot of people, I'm not even sure that a lot of people are wearing this thing right. Because a lot of people will try to put this on and they'll try to push this back to the bottom of their head where the Quest 1 was. And that's not how this thing is supposed to fit. This strap, as you can see by the angle, it's a straight on angle from your eyes. So if you take your eyes and you go straight back, that's where this strap is supposed to be sitting, which is what I call a crown. The crown of the head is where this sits. That sits well above the ears. A lot of people are saying, oh, it cuts off my ears. Well, yeah, if you got it pulled down here and it's pushing down there. But if it's a crown fit, which is what I've got going on here, right? Then it doesn't bother your ears. It's comfortable. And that's where it's supposed to sit. It's not supposed to be down here back behind the bump on your head. Now, is this comfortable? Actually, yeah, it's okay. I mean, listen, it can definitely be improved, and that's why I got this guy. But overall, and again, this is one of those things too where a lot of people don't have this thing quite fitted right. And again, you want to try to get this to be more on your forehead than your cheekbone. Now, I keep this a little bit tight, and I'll tell you why. When you've got the Quest 1 and it's hugging the back of your head, right? I feel like I could do whatever I want in this guy. I could jump around. I could play super hot. I could dive at the sofa if I want to. I feel this is snug on my head. I really do. I feel safe with this on. With the crown on the top, while it's comfortable, I don't get a sense of security with this on. I feel like it'll stay on if I'm playing Beat Saber. I'd be a lot more worried if I were playing Echo or I was playing Super Hot or something else that requires a lot of jumping around. So that's the problem with this strap. If anything, comfort's not the problem. It's really a matter of, does it feel safe to be jumping around doing crazy stuff with it? So this guy, of course, is very simply to cradle the back of your head. And once you've got this thing on, there's a considerable amount of comfort, in my opinion. And this pops right on. You saw how easy I popped it off. I can just slide it in there, slide it in there, slide it in here. It's very cheap, inexpensive, easy to do. And then when you've got this thing on, right? Now take a look at the way it's cupping the back of my head. I feel a lot more secure with this guy, right?
Well, I can't because your hand's in the way.
Oh, my hand's in the way. Thank you. Right? So you can see it's cupping the back of my head. I feel a lot safer with the Quest 2 on with this little guy cupping the back of my head. You'll also notice I have no other aftermarket mods on here. I don't have a new face gasket. I don't have a battery strap on it. I don't have anything. Honestly, and the simple truth is, I spend a lot more of my long-term playing time on the Quest 1 because of the comfort. I play short bursts of things on here, which is why I don't necessarily need the extra battery. So what other things can we talk about before we get to the IPD, which to me is incredibly important, is this face gasket. This gasket is made of very inexpensive foam. I understand what Facebook was up to. They were trying to cut the cost of this thing so low that they could reduce the price, but this gasket is not very comfortable. It sucks in sweat. You'll want to probably replace this at some point. Again, I spend a lot of my long-term time playing on the Quest 1, so I'm not ready to remove that. And also, for some reason, hair gets stuck in it too. It's so gross. There's like hair everywhere. Okay, so this is, in my opinion, the cheapest possible unit that Facebook could put together. In terms of construction and quality, just look at these guys. There's a premium feel to the Quest 1. just in general, everything about the Quest 1 from a construction point of view feels better and it's more comfortable. And so that's one of the reasons why I spend more time in the Quest 1 on the Quest 2 for long-term gaming. There's other reasons which we're going to get to shortly, but this was designed to be the cheapest possible product, from the strap to the construction. One of the reasons why I immediately put one of these guys in, well, also you see I put one in on my Quest 1 as well, for magnetic charging, is because people have reported that this USB-C port can be a little sketchy. And listen, from a quality control point of view, I feel that it's probably warranted not to be plugging and unplugging and plugging and unplugging and plugging and unplugging into this port. And I spend a lot of my time with the Quest plugged in developing software like Playlist Editor Pro. So for me, that's an important characteristic. This is more cheaply built. It's just that simple. So let's talk about IPD. IPD is the distance between your pupils, right? And it's measured in millimeters. So there are apps that do this. Your optometrist is the best place to go and get your IPD measured, because apps on the phone and all that other stuff, they're fine. They give you a nice baseline. But if you really want to know what your IPD is, ask your eye doctor. They'll tell you. My IPD falls at about 70 to 71. And it's worth noting that the further away you're looking, your IPD apparently shrinks depending on what you're looking at, or how close something is. Your IPD can shift. Use it the other way around. Further away, it gets wider. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Your IPD does shift by a couple of millimeters. So why is this important, right? So if you've ever had a bad pair of glasses, or you've worn an old pair of glasses or somebody else's glasses, right? You lost your glasses, you borrowed your friend's glasses, it's pretty close. You might start having some sort of a headache, your eye focus. The other part of the equation is these lenses. This is probably easier to get to. These lenses have a spot in the middle that gives you the optimum viewing of the VR content. It's called the sweet spot, right? So if these are my lenses, right, and if I'm looking right down the middle, I've got the sweet spot. As these lenses are, let's for example say that my IPD was smaller and these lenses start moving outward, right? Let's say that this is an IPD setting of 68 and I've got a 64, right? So now my pupils are not centered inside the sweet spot. Now I have to choose. I can take one of my eyeballs and put it right over the sweet spot and get these weird sort of God rays coming off of this one. Or I can try to go somewhere in the middle and get light God rays from both of them. Either way, I'm going to probably start to be getting headaches. I may have eye strain. There's all sorts of reasons why IPD is really important. I've got an article on it. I'll link to it in the description below that talks all about IPD and why it's important. So the IPD slider here is actually a slider, and I can't remember the full range it goes to. I believe it goes up to 70 and down to 64 or something like that. When you're sliding this slider, the screens on the inside, along with, see how the actual lenses are moving? The lenses and the screens move together, right? This is important because not only are you moving the sweet spot for your eyes, you're also taking the two screens with you. That gives you the absolute best possible experience. This is why an IPD slider is so important. Now, let's go to the Quest 2. No IPD slider. They made a conscious decision. And listen, the IPD slider is expensive, right? Now they have to have two screens in here. They have to have mechanics in here to run that. So instead, for the Quest 2, they took the cheapest possible route and they made 3 settings. And you change the settings by grabbing the lenses and actually physically moving them with your hands. This is one setting, another setting, and another setting. So I don't remember the exact numbers. I'll put them in the description. But at the widest point, my IPD is still too big for the Quest 2 to be proper dial-in for my IPD, right? And as such, I can't spend as much time in the Quest 2 as I can in the Quest 1. So there is no manual other than these 3 spots, right? And some people say that if you're really careful, you can kind of move in between if you have an IPD setting that's in between. I have to keep it out all the way. One of the downsides of that is, due to the mechanics or inside the unit, I constantly have 2 little bars on the outside of my peripheral vision when I'm in this IPD setting. So if I'm looking straight, right, and here's my lenses, I constantly have on the side It's really hard to show this, but on the side of my peripheral, I have a bar over here. And I have one on both sides of my lenses, right? So when I'm looking at the Quest 2 in VR, I have little lines on the side of my peripheral vision. That makes me crazy. And it's a distraction. People say, well, VR is all immersive. Well, it's not as immersive when you got these two bars sitting in here. But I have no choice because the Quest 2 will not support my IPD. So that is definitely one of the greater advantages of the Quest 1 over the Quest 2 is a manual IPD slider. This also ensures that more people, you can dial in more people. Like if you have a party, which you probably shouldn't be with COVID going on, but if you have your friends over and you need to change their position, you can put it on their head, put their thumb on here and say, slide it until it looks good, right? If you want to do that with the Quest 2, well, you can't. Well, let's be honest. So that's the importance of IPD and why the Quest 1 takes a victory lap when it comes to comfort in that department. As well as, let's be honest, it's a more comfortable headset out of the box as well. So I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Shane, the Quest 2, this is a better unit. It's newer. It's better. It's got to have some redeeming qualities over the Quest 1. And you're absolutely right. And we're going to get to those next. So that sort of takes care of these units as they are. Let's just put these to the side and talk about the controllers. Because this, in my opinion, is there's only one negative drawback to these controllers over these controllers. And we're going to talk about that as well. But otherwise, these controllers are representatively better than these controllers. So I'm going to take, let's see. I'll take one from each side. Okay, there we go. I'll get rid of those. All right, so let's talk about their physical characteristics. The Quest 2's selling point is there's some place to put your thumb. I thought that was sort of goofball, to be honest with you. Well, now you have a place to rest your thumb. No, okay, that's a bullet point on the box. I don't get it. Let me put this guy on. So from a comfort point of view, you do see I have some aftermarkets on here, and I'm going to take those off. But from a point of view here, there is a wider base here on the Quest 2 versus the Quest 1. There's a smaller base here. And there's actually, the thumb rest is not the benefit of this wider base, and I'm going to show you why in a minute. Everything else is the same. The buttons are the same. I like the extruded buttons here on the Quest 1. This button sort of sticks out. This one is concave versus convex, right? So I like it to be sticking out a little bit. I've never accidentally pushed that button. People say, oh no, you'll accidentally push the button if it's not concave. Not true. These controls all feel the same. They're both capacitive touch. So if you rest your thumb on one of these buttons, your on-screen representation does that, as well as your finger movements and everything else. Both triggers, both grips, everything otherwise looks and feels pretty much the same. This is a bigger controller. This is bigger in your hand. Let me take these off so you can get an unfettered view here of the two controllers. I guess that didn't solve anything, did it? I thought I was going to get away without doing that, but I'm not. All right, off to the side with you. So now take a look. So you can tell this is definitely a bigger grip. If you have smaller hands, this may be a problem for you. I find both of these equally comfortable in terms of grips. Plus, I'm going to put these aftermarkets back on anyway. So what are the other defining characteristics between these two? I really, really want to stress how important this bigger base is. So if you were to look dead on here, the amount of support that this ring has goes all the way back to here, right? So if we're looking at this, there's only this much of the ring that isn't supported by a heavy base. Now look at this guy. Look at how much of this ring, down to here, all of this ring is unsupported by a base. Now, people who have punched their TV, punched their wall, punched their controllers against each other, or have scuffed off of furniture, they can attest that these things can break. Now, I'm not saying these can't. I'm saying that with the amount of base that's supporting this ring on this controller, I truly believe that it will support and survive a better impact than these. To me, forget about the thumb, resting your thumb thing. That's just marketing hoopla. The fact that these rings are going to be more secure and more stable having a bigger base, to me, that's a huge deal. Now, the other thing about the Quest 1 that people complain about were these magnetic battery covers. Yes, these battery covers, you're playing Beat Saber, you're swinging down, and as your hand slides a little bit, the battery case moves with it. This made people crazy. In fact, it made me crazy. One of the best parts about having a grip is that it gets rid of that problem. The other problem with these guys is there's a spring, and I was going to say I could take this battery out. Use a box knife for this, but why not? All right. Inside, I don't know if you can see in there, there's a spring, like a spring that you would normally see in a battery compartment of something. And springs are great. The problem is when you have a battery in here and you're throwing a lot of centrifugal force downward, like you're striking a box in Beat Saber, the battery slides slightly to compress the spring. What happens then is the positive terminal disconnects momentarily from the controller, making your controller fly off into the distance or doing other crazy stuff. My solution, I'll have a link to the video, is to put a little tiny piece of double sticky back tape. When you put your battery in, you just go over the top of it, put it in, and then push down against that tape. Now the battery doesn't go anywhere and you're good to go. So that's a problem with these controllers. So how does the Quest 2 hold up with these particulars? Let's take a look. Let me get that out of the way. It's creepy. All right. So now we have another cover, but it's a clip-on case, and it actually requires a little bit of effort to get it off. This does not magically slide on its own. I mean, it's not going to come down on you when you're in the middle of Beat Saber, which is great. It actually is some force required. Now let's take a look at how they fixed the battery problem in here. God bless them. Now on the inside, you can see there's not a spring, but this high tension bar. And if you put your finger in here and you push against that bar, you can tell it's not going anywhere, which is great. So you put the battery back in, there's a lot of pressure against it. It's holding it up against the positive terminal and it's not going anywhere. So to me, that's probably between that and the ring support, that gives these controllers a definitive heads up over the Quest 1 controllers. Now, the other thing is battery life. And we're going to talk about battery life later on, but the Quest 2's battery life is also better than the Quest 1's controller battery life. And we'll talk more about that towards the end when we talk about battery life. Okay, so we need to talk about the screens, right? So this is the big deal. More screen resolution in the Quest 2 versus the Quest 1. Almost 50% more pixels equal better graphics, 90 hertz versus 72 hertz. These are all great numbers. The Quest 2 on paper is a slam dunk, right? It starts off with higher resolution and they add 90 hertz. So you have a higher frame rate. And that looks great on paper. The Quest 1 running at 72 hertz. Let me give you the screen resolution. I actually wrote them down just to make sure I get them right. The Quest 1, 1440 by 1600. The Quest 2, 1832 by 1920. So you can do the math yourself. I believe it's 48% more pixels. And everybody knows more pixels equal better picture, right? So what does the resolution really do? The resolution, there's something called screen door effect. When you're looking at the Quest 1 or on older VR headsets, the pixels inside are more spread apart, leaving a space in between them. If you were to take that and pull it back a ways, all of those spaces, vertically and horizontally, horizontally and vertically, create almost a screen door effect. Now, if you've got a screen door in your house, go to the door right now, open the door and look through the screen door. You can see everything back there, but there's a slight set of lines inside there that are causing a little bit of distortion. That's called the screen door effect. The Quest 1 has a screen door effect, which is undeniably there. The Quest 2 has it too, but it's almost impossible to see, or at least to notice, because there's more resolution and the pixels are closer together, which removes that gap. So, less screen door effect on the Quest 2 versus the Quest 1, and that is straight on due to the resolution changes. What about the 90 hertz thing versus 72 hertz? Is that a valid thing? So, when the Quest 2 shipped, the Quest 2 had 90 hertz, but only in the menu, right? So only in the home environment could you see 90 hertz. And then recently an update came out which opened up 90 hertz to developers. So now developers can use 90 hertz. Those of you who are using SideQuest were able to enable 90 hertz regardless and play a lot of games in 90 hertz that you couldn't normally do because the developer hadn't supported it yet. Now, there is an ongoing argument on the Quest subreddit, the Oculus Quest subreddit, Does 90 hertz really make that much of a difference? Can you see it? Some people can see it, some people can't. Some games show it off better than others. Frankly, to me, I don't see a ton of improvement in 90 hertz. I may not have a sensitivity to it. Other people, now we've had a huge discussion about this. You can search the subreddit if you want to see more. But frankly, 90 hertz to me isn't as big of a deal as the reduction of the screen door effect. So if you're banking on 90 hertz being OMG, this is amazing, maybe it's not. Maybe you see it, maybe you don't. Maybe there's a game that you're playing that you see it, where other games you do not. Right now, only a couple of games have official developer support, so we don't really know. And a lot of people are questioning, why aren't the developers on board? Why aren't the developers all pushing the button to release their 90 hertz versions of these games? And I can tell you right now, it's probably due to performance, right? 90 hertz is going to take a lot more of your, it's going to take a lot more resources. Hi. What can I tell you? 90 hertz is going to require more resources for your Quest to pump through. It's also going to reduce your battery life, and we're going to talk more about battery life later. So if you don't see a difference in 90 hertz, you're still sort of paying the price because it's using 90 hertz. So, listen, it may be a big deal to you. It may not be a big deal to you. I personally would much rather have the higher resolution and better performance versus having 90 hertz and have a hit on the performance or have my frame rates drop. It's all up to you. It's a personal thing, I believe. Now, the other elephant in the room that we must talk about, the change of screen technologies. Again, Quest 2 aimed to be the cheapest possible headset that they could make. Instead of using two separate screens on the Quest 1 that could independently move to handle your IPD, there's only one screen in here. And they changed from an OLED screen in the Quest 1 to an LCD screen in the Quest 2. It's all about cost savings, right? What does that mean? What is the difference between OLED and LCD? Without getting into a huge technical discussion, LCDs on the Quest 2, the LCD screens, do not produce effective blacks. They produce grays. Now, OLED is a matter of turning pixels on and off. When something is black, there's just no pixels. You turn them off and it's black. When you're inside of a game in Quest 2 and you need a dark environment, I'm talking about Blair Witch, I'm talking about Walking Dead, I'm talking about Gloomy Eyes, I'm talking about games that are designed to be played in the dark. I'm talking about movie theaters. If you go into big screen and you dim the lights, right, you want a dark theater. That's the whole point. The OLED screen on here is amazing because you get real blacks. LCD screen, it's always lit. And this is very easy for you to see in your own home. Perhaps you don't have either one of these and you're trying to figure out what the real difference is. If you've got an LCD monitor, right? Bring up a black screen, a loading screen, something like that. Just have the monitor on, but nothing being shown. You can tell it's on, right? Because it's not really black. It's not off. Pixels are all turned on, but they're representative of black, which means they're kind of gray. They're not really black, they're kind of gray. And that's exactly what the Quest 2 suffers from. Blacks aren't black, they're gray. And depending on your brightness settings, depending on a couple of other factors, this may be worse on some LCD screens. People have reported 2 different Quest 2s having a different level of black or gray. The other part of that equation is because your blacks are all actually lit. So, for example, let's say you have a black screen in front of you and there's a sun in the middle of it. There's a big ball of orange sun in the middle. Because of the lighting on the Quest 2 showing you grays, the color on the sun is more muted. Now, if you don't have any basis of comparison, you're not going to really see it. But with the Quest 1, when you have no pixels turned on around the sun, the color of the sun pops out a lot more at you. And again, this varies by game, by so many different factors, but it's not fair not to bring it up and address it. Screen door effect is a trade-off in this case for better blacks and better colors. Less screen door effect, less blacks, well, no real blacks, and muted colors. Again, it's going to depend on the game and it's going to depend on your tolerance for that sort of thing. But to say this has higher resolution and 90 hertz equals a lot better, I play almost all of my games in the dark, I play on here. If you're playing Phasmophobia, if you're playing PC games like Half-Life Alyx that require good solid darks to be immersive and scary, you probably want to be playing on the Quest 1, especially if you've got a choice between the two. I'll play all my dark games right here on this guy. Blair Witch, a lot better on here than on here, I assure you. All right, so we talked about the screens, we've talked about the differences on LCD, we've talked about the differences of resolution. I think, let me see, we need to talk about battery life and we need to talk about processing. So let's talk about the battery life, because we're talking about the battery life of two different components here. We're talking about the battery life of the main units, and we're talking about the battery life on the controllers. We'll start with the controllers because they're the easiest. Quest 2, better battery life. Quest 1, not as good battery life. How much difference are we talking about? Is this OMG, if you believe Oculus Quest subreddit, this battery will last you months and months and months, even though the Quest has only been out for a month. Somehow they know that it'll last months and months and months, whatever. I can tell you though that across the board, people report longer battery time on the Quest 2 controller than on the Quest 1 controller. Does this mean your battery is going to be different? Listen, there's so many different factors which judge and control battery life discharge. How much you're using it? What sort of motions are you doing? Are you playing point and click adventure games, or are you playing Beat Saber with Expert Plus all the time? All of these are going to change, and nobody, to my knowledge, including me, has put these on some sort of a centrifuge, turn them on, and let them discharge and get an accurate reading as to how much longer these batteries will last than these batteries. But because the community as whole says this has better battery life, I'm going to assume that this is true. Again, I would love to do some sort of a test. A centrifuge for each one would be perfect, but you have to make sure the Quest stay awake and all sorts of other craziness. So, battery life better on the Quest 2. The controller, again, this controller, I gotta give it the heads up. There's one more thing we need to talk about with controllers though, that is a down point, and many people have brought this up. When you're using the Quest controller and you're pointing at something straight, you know, the little line that's coming out of when you're in VR, there's a line coming out that you're pointing at. When your wrist is straight, the line is straight. When you're using the Quest 2, if your wrists are straight, it's pointing downwards. I don't know why they chose to do that, but they did. So if I'm pointing straight with both controllers, the Quest 1 is pointing straight ahead. The Quest 2 is pointing at a slight down angle. So in other words, if you want to point straight, you have to slightly lift up your wrist. So you're always at a slight wrist angle trying to point straight. It's a little thing, but it's worth mentioning, and I'm not sure exactly why they chose to do that. But listen, I will trade that for all the other benefits of the controller. Battery life. Who wins? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, battery life is better on the Quest 1. It doesn't take a genius to understand why, right? LCD takes more power to drive. Half the time the pixels are off when you're on an OLED screen. Of course the battery life is going to be better on the Quest 1. There shouldn't even be a question, or we shouldn't even be discussing that the battery life is better on the Quest 1. And it is. So what exactly does that mean? What does that translate into actual play time? Oculus will say it's between 2 and 3 hours for both headsets. I get about 2 hours on this. If I'm playing straight, like if we're playing walkabout golf and we're playing hole after hole after hole, course after course, this runs about 2 hours. And it's going to, of course, depend on the game and everything else. There's all sorts of factors involved. This runs about an hour and a half. So, I mean, that's a half-hour difference, which to me is a lot, especially when you're talking about 2 hours being the total amount. If it was a half hour less and they both this ran 10 hours and this ran 9.5 hours, you'd be going, oh yeah, well, who cares? Yeah, but we're talking about 2 hours, which is barely enough time to get anything fun done, versus an hour and a half, which is probably not enough time to get anything fun done. So there's definitely, and again, it makes sense. This is running at 90 hertz. This is running at 72 hertz. Of course. The processor in here is bigger and better and beefier. Of course, the battery is going to be better over here. Again, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. So that's the difference in battery life, which is why Facebook themselves sell a battery pack for $150 with a strap that straps along, or is it $100? I don't remember. A battery strap that hooks onto the back of this to prolong your battery life, right? So I guess it makes sense. Now, what about pricing, right? So let's talk about pricing. So in order to be as aggressive as possible, they've cut every possible corner in building this device. Oh, we haven't talked about the CPU. I'm sorry. We need to talk about that too. The pricing on this guy is $299, despite what some news outlets are saying that's the regular price, not the Black Friday price. So this is actually a $300 headset. This guy you can't buy anymore. So you're going to be in the used market. And in the used market, this is going to set you back. I wouldn't pay more than $150, $175 maybe, right? So you're talking about a substantial price difference. And again, of course, this is going to be used and you have all the worries and concerns. Your warranty is non-transferable. So if some guy sells you one of these saying he's got another 6 months of warranty left or whatever, not true. The warranty is only good for the original purchaser. So keep that in mind if you're buying a used unit. But when you start thinking to yourself, I can get one and a half or two of these for the price of one of these, and you've got 5 kids to feed in the house, I don't know. You might want to think about it. It's a thought. So the other thing that, I don't even know why I didn't have that on my cheat sheet, but I didn't. Let's talk about the CPUs between the two units because this is important. Obviously to drive higher resolution, higher hertz on the screen, right? To drive 90 hertz with a higher resolution, you're going to require a bigger processor. This has the XR2, which is sort of the ipso de facto leading generation for VR. This is using an older mobile, the Snapdragon 835 processor. Now, there's a great little chart running around talking about how much better the XR2 is. It's 2.5 this, 6.5 times that. But let's talk about real life for a second. So the real question that you should be asking yourself is there anything on this device that I can't run on this device? The answer is no, right? So that's, wait, what? So you've got a brand new unit, the Quest 2 versus the Quest 1, and every single title that's available for this unit is available for this unit. There's no exclusive software for the Quest 2. A lot of you have a Quest 1 and you're pining away for a Quest 2. It's like, oh, I bought this 4 months ago. I can't believe Oculus screwed me and they released the Quest 2. I mean, I just spent $400. I could have spent $300 and got more. The truth is there's nothing on here that you can't play on here. That's something to keep in check. Keep yourself, you're okay with the Quest 1. Relax. In some cases, this is the better guy. So what does that processing power do for you? What does having the XR2 versus the Snapdragon, what does that really equate to? It does allow developers to put in some higher resolution textures. It allows them to optimize their games and to have the games perform a little bit better. And many developers, God bless you all, are going back and doing optimizations to allow Quest 2 people to maybe have a better looking experience than the Quest 1 people. So if that's important to you, if you're talking about texture resolutions, if you're talking about certain things, this guy could give you a bump in there. And of course, there's the 90 hertz if you can see it, and if your game happens to take advantage of that. But yes, at some point in time, developers are going to cut ties with this. They're going to say, I want to write software exclusive for the Quest 2 that's going to have, it's going to make use of the 6 gigabytes of RAM in here versus the 4 gigabytes of RAM in here. At some point, somebody's going to jump ship and say, I'm not supporting the Quest 1 anymore. I'm only supporting the Quest 2. When that becomes a reality, when we have an exclusive title that only Quest 2 can play, I would definitively say those of you who have a Quest 1 may want to start thinking, yeah, maybe I better upgrade. Right? Right now, though, the processor is there to suck up the extra resolution and to suck up the 90 hertz. And yes, it does provide some games with some enhancements, much sort of like the PS4 versus the PS4 Pro, right? They play the same games. And the pros have got a little bit better here and there, but in reality, you're not missing out having a Quest 1. Again, at some point in time, we'll see something exclusive on here that won't be playable on the Quest 1. When that happens, then I think we'll be having a different discussion with a different video. All right, well, there you have it. I think I've covered just about everything possible. The only thing we haven't talked about, the elephant in the room, is Facebook, right? That's what we're talking about. If you've got one of these guys and you've never merged your Oculus account with Facebook and you don't want to be part of the Facebook ecosystem, then you have the option to stay on Oculus only without Facebook until January of 2023. That's a long time. Dude, 2 years in VR time is like 100 years in human terms, right? You saw what happened in 18 months from here to here. Imagine what another 2 years is going to be from here to whatever the next thing is, right? So you might be able to just hang out here for a little while. So this guy, there's no way around Facebook. It doesn't matter if your Oculus account is old or grandfathered in. As of October 11th, both of these devices by a brand new user requires a Facebook account. For some of you, it doesn't matter. For some of you, you're outraged and pissed. I fall into the latter category. I should not necessarily need a Facebook or any social media account. Forget about Facebook itself. I should not need a Twitter account. I should not need an Instagram account. I should not need a Facebook account. I should not need a WhatsApp account in order to use a piece of hardware that I purchased. Without Facebook, this doesn't work at all. I have a problem with that. Facebook has a lot of privacy issues. They have a lot of privacy issues going way back, and they beg forgiveness instead of asking permission. That's their way. I know what you're thinking. Shane, I have nothing to hide. I don't care if Facebook is harvesting me 24 hours a day. This is a bigger discussion than for this video. I just want you to know Facebook is not optional here. If you have an older Oculus account, Facebook is still optional here. Some of you have a Rift S and you're thinking, which one of these should I get? I can get this for dirt cheap and I don't have to use Facebook? Great. What a winner. Right? So there are situations where the Quest 1 may be a better purchase. You can use these for both as PC VR headsets. They both use Oculus Link. They both use virtual desktop. There's no distinct advantages that I have seen yet of virtual desktop or Link based on these two devices. Now, listen, I don't spend a lot of time in Link. People likely to argue with me about this in the comments below, and that's great. Bring on the discussion. Bring on the specs. Bring on everything that you can, because people need to be aware. That's all. That's all I'm saying. Whether or not 90 hertz means so much to you, but not to you, people need to be aware that that's the case. Listen, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is the culmination of months and months, well, month and months of effort with the Quest line. And I have a Reverb G2 coming. The HP Reverb G2 is on its way. It should be here next week. In that case, I'll be able to do more videos and talk about, because a lot of people are saying Oculus Quest 2 or Reverb G2. And I'll be able to answer those questions for you when I actually have a Reverb G2 in my hands and not speculating based on some press release. When I actually get to use it myself, I'll be able to tell you, and you guys know me, I'll tell you the straight scoop about the G2. When it comes out, I'll tell you if there's anything wrong with it. I'll tell you about the problems with it, because that's just the way I am. Anyway, I guess that's it. Remember, check out the description below. I'm going to show you where to get one of these guys. I'll tell you about these guys that I'm using. I'll tell you about this awesome, I love this so much. I love these magnetic charging cables, right? In case, you get all excited, you just pull it off. You don't wreck your USB 2 port or your USB-C port. So check the description. I'll have lots of links. I'll have lots of other information. And of course, as always, please subscribe, like this video, check that little bell down below, and you'll get notifications of these videos. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. This is Shane R. Monroe with Monroe World. Thanks for watching.